thought we could have a game of trick or treat, keeping it with the Halloween theme there. So treat, it's basically going to be true or false. So if you think that it's true, put treat. If you think that it's false, put trick. Or you can use the emojis as well. I'm just going to pop up the chat box just so that I can see everybody's answers when we're ready. So let's have a little look at the first one. So dogs only scratch when they have fleas. Is this true or false, or trick or treat? So first one up, we've got a trick. Anybody else? So dogs only scratch when they have fleas. Feel free to put true or false if you want to, or trick or treat, whichever is easier for you. Lots of tricks. We've got a true in there, so we've got a treat. Yeah, fantastic. Brilliant. Yeah, so you're all absolutely right. There's been lots of tricks in there. So yeah, trick, it's false. So allergies, yeast infections, dry skin as well. These can all make our dogs quite itchy. So moving on to the next one. So pumpkin can help support digestion in dogs. Is this true or false, or trick or treat? So we've got treat, true, treat. Yeah, lots of different ones coming through. We've got a not sure. No idea. Fantastic. Well, you're in the right place because we're going to tell you the answer. So yeah, it is actually true. So it's treat. So plain cooked pumpkin adds fibre and can help with those tummy issues. So yeah, pumpkin's great, especially at this time of year, and there's lots of pumpkins out there. Make use whilst they're all in the shops. Next one. You should only start desensitising pets to fireworks on bonfire night. Is this true or false, or trick or treat? We've got trick, false, false. Yeah, lots of falses coming through there. Amazing. So yeah, that was a trick. So start early. Gradual exposure, weeks in advance. We normally say about 2 to 4 weeks in advance helps them to cope better. But I do know that we're going to be deep diving into that a bit further. So fantastic. And last but not least, chocolate is less toxic if it is white chocolate. Is this a trick or is this a treat, or true or false? Trick. Lots of trick. False. Yeah, fantastic. So actually, I put a little bit of a trick question in there. So actually, it sort of is, but it sort of isn't. So white chocolate has less theobromine in. So the theobromine is the bit that is toxic to our dogs, but it can still cause upset tummies. So yeah, even though it is white chocolate, it's got less theobromine in it. We would still say avoid all types of chocolate. Fantastic. So now it's time to hand over to our lovely Leah. She's going to take us through how our pooches' coats can change as the seasons shift, and she's also going to introduce us to some of the creepy crawlies that can make them itch as well. So passing over to Leah.
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, everyone. It's so lovely to see so many of you here. It's really nice to be able to give some support during sort of these autumn and winter months. So we all know as seasons change, there can be a lot of adjustments for us, as well as our four-legged friends as well. So we might go from darker mornings to the sun setting earlier, changes in those temperatures, events where we need to adapt for our dogs, such as bonfire night. And with this comes those changes in routine and adjustments. So first up with those changes and adjustments, we see in winter and autumn that there is some temperature shifts. And with that, we may be more inclined to put our heating on, our radiators on, get a little bit toasty and warm during these times as well. And naturally, we can see a change in coat condition because of that. So we might see in some instances allergy responses, and we might also see some changes in that skin and coat condition. So we do know with heat in winter becomes an increase in dust mites. These dust mites, they can live in our home naturally. So regardless of how much hoovering, how much cleaning that you do, they do naturally live in there as well. So this is something that we want to cover and make sure it's important for us to go over. So some dogs can really respond to those dust mites and really show up some symptoms such as irritated skin, scratching those ears, shaking that head, licking those paws, and just generally skin irritation in colder months as well. And to prevent this, we want to think about regular hoovering, mopping, and also washing materials like their bedding, anything they sit on, sofa cushion, things like that, on a fairly high heat wash just to eliminate those dust mites from the environment. Usually, what I do say is if you can do a 60-degree wash, that's going to help eliminate those dust mites and just keep them at bay as much as possible for dogs that are a little bit sensitive to those dust mites that live in the home. Um, in other changes that we do see, we may introduce different cleaning products or fragrances within that autumn and winter time. I know myself, I sort of enjoy those pumpkin spices, those cinnamon smells. Naturally, we start to introduce those different smells as the seasons change, but it can be worthwhile being conscious of these changes that we are making in case we see some skin irritation in our dogs as well, just because they may not be used to those changes or those cleaning products that you are using, or if it is something new, the skin and coat can sort of be a little bit irritant with those changes that we are making as well. So always worthwhile sampling a small wash or just introducing one thing at a time just so we can eliminate if that is the issue. But we can also help to monitor these patterns or these changes that we are seeing. And we can do that in many different ways. One of those is keeping a little doggy diary, logging in there where they have been on walks on a daily, where they are eating, how they are eating and what they're eating, and how they have been in that time. So usually I say month to month, just logging in there these sort of patterns that we are seeing, because we might see that if they are having increased woodland walks at this time of year, have they got an environmental allergy? Or is it something that we're seeing a little bit more consistency and we might start thinking about the treats or the food that they're eating and whether we need to adapt and change that during those allergies or during those colder months as well. So during autumn, we also can see an increase in what we call harvest mites. So with these, they look like a little small, round, reddy orange mite, and that's why it's given the term harvest mite, and that's just because they are quite prevalent at this time of year. And the areas that we commonly see these on is the paws, the armpit areas, the legs, so they tend to attach to sort of those lower body regions. And with that, we might see irritation, scratching, and they're just not very nice to be on our dogs, are they? So we want to be making sure that we are completely up to date with regular flea and mite treatment. It is just as important in the winter as it is in the summer because we get different risks in winter. So we want to be making sure they're covered all year round and regularly inspecting these areas as well. So looking at their paws, their sort of armpit regions, their groins, making sure that they're nice and clear in those areas. Last but not least, we also want to sort of look at sort of their skin and coat changes. Thinking about our double coated dogs, do anyone have any double coated dogs here? So golden retrievers, huskies, German shepherds. Do anyone have any thicker coated breeds? Pop it in the chat if you do. This will be a little bit more relevant to you. So with them, it means that they do stay slightly warmer because of that thickened coat, and we know that they can struggle in summer, but also equally winter as well, because we're putting our heating on, and we are nice and toasty and warm, but they've also got that extra layer, so they can find it difficult to get rid of that excess heat. And with that in mind comes that they can build a lot more moisture on that skin barrier, and they can also have that buildup of bacteria because they're not being able to expel that moisture. So there is the increased risk of things like yeast infections developing on the skin, and most commonly we do see in these breeds as well hot spots, so areas where they come a little bit more heated. We tend to see it around sort of the neck area, and at the sort of base of the tail, where we sort of see these irritations where the fur is a little bit more thickened. So having a good look in those areas, and if you do see any itching, rubbing body parts on furniture, particular smell or discharge, then it's always worthwhile reaching out to your vet, but also making sure that they're on top of regular grooms if they're a dog that can be cut, or if not, using sort of these de-shedding tools just to help get that thickened layer a little bit sort of thinner during these times as well. So Moving on, we want to look at the difference between an itch and a reaction. So it's very difficult sometimes to tell the difference between the two. So when it comes to telling the difference, with sort of a general itch, we do know our dogs do like to naturally groom. It does release endorphins. It does make them feel happy by doing that within the brain signals. So it's quite common to see them sort of licking or chewing at their paws, their legs, their genital areas as well. And they may just spend a couple of minutes doing that once or twice a day. So quite commonly we see it first thing in the morning when they're getting up and as they're settling down for nighttime as well. However, with a reaction, we will see an increase in licking and itching throughout the day. So it may be quite commonly throughout the day we do see that, and it will be for longer durations. So they may spend more time paying attention to body parts such as scratching their underbelly using the carpet or with their back leg. They may be sort of scratching at their ears, and they may be licking in different areas as well, like their paws, their legs, anywhere they can reach really. But with a reaction, we might have other clear indications as well with redness. So we might see increased redness, especially if they're paying particular attention to that or sort of chewing their skin a lot more. We will see that redness. We might also see inflammation of the skin as well. So sort of a raised area. And then there might also be a smell. So particularly the ears can become quite yeasty and smelly if there's start of a reaction and infection coming from that. And then if they've broke the skin through scratching, we might see a discharge or scabbing over the skin as well. So important to prepare for winter so that we can prevent things like dust mite allergies, we can prevent things like reactions or just general drying out of the skin as well. It's important to prepare for those short-haired or fine-haired dogs. If we have got one in the chat, it'd be lovely to see. And we might also want to add extra layers to them if they do feel the cold a little bit more on walks. So we might want to pop a little jumper or a little coat on them, especially if they do feel the cold, just to prevent sort of particular joints becoming a little bit more cold, especially if they do have a little bit of arthritis or they do have sensitive joints, as well as protecting that skin barrier and that skin level as well from exposure to colder weather. And for our sort of longer, sort of double haired coats, we might want to do quite the opposite and book in sort of a groom or a de-shedding session ahead of winter to prevent those hot spots as we've been speaking about. We might also think about using skin supplements to top up those essential fatty acids, such as omega-3 and 6, which we know can be really beneficial for that skin and coat health to help remain replenished, hydrated, and just overall support during times that they might be a bit more strain. So things like our fish oil are quite nice to have just in there as well. We also do know marine sources of nutrition can be ideal for skin and coat health, just because of how it works and functions. So our salmon recipe is also a really nice sort of alternative to feed during them times as well. We do find that dogs that struggle with allergies during those winter months, they can benefit from some applications to help soothe that skin. So using things like an antibacterial wipe after walks can be really nice, so that if there is a risk that they've got an environmental allergy, wiping those down can be really nice to support that. So looking at CLX wipes, which is something that's readily available out there, that's something that I've personally used and find useful, and just wiping down the legs and paw areas. And then using topicals to sort of help soothe and support any inflammation that we might be seeing during that time. And it can just help reduce that irritation and sort of having to bother their sort of legs as well. So using things like oatmeal shampoos, oatmeal topicals or creams, and then using sort of ones that might just help reduce that inflammation, like Duxol Calm mousse is a mousse that can be applied every few days, and it just helps sort of absorb quite quickly if we have got a dog that does tend to lick quite a lot. So that absorbs nicely to avoid that worry about them licking it too much. But if you do see any sudden changes, so if we do see things like hives or bumps and lumps on the skin, if we do see sort of an increase in redness suddenly or just erratic irritation, we might just want to raise it with our vets just to make sure that there's no underlying causes there as well. So we've ran through sort of a lot of sort of skin irritations, how we can prevent those and how we can prepare for winter as well. So now I'll hand back over to Rachel, who will go over a few other things.
Thanks, Leah, for sharing all that amazing information. Before we do jump over to our next speaker, let's have a little bit of fun, and we'll do a quick poll. So just drop your answers in the chat, just as we've done previously, and let's see what you think. So the first one is, what's your pooch's biggest autumn itch? Is it harvest mites or fleas, dry flaky skin, allergies? They could have allergies to grass, pollens, dust, that kind of thing, yeasty paws or ears, or maybe none. Maybe they're absolutely fine and don't have any itchiness at the moment. Let us know in the comments. We've got one with redness and flaky skin coming through. Any more? Or is everybody's pooches just smooth, shiny, really good all seasons round? Harvest mites, yeah. Allergies, yeasty paws, yeah. Allergies, lots of allergies. Allergies is quite a common one. Yeasty ears, yeah. Perfect. Itchy paws, none just now. Yeah, perfect. Fantastic. Yeah, so lots of doggies with lots of different problems, but yeah, you're in the right spot to hear all the nice advice. Fantastic. So now we're going to move over to Anna. Anna is going to be sharing her top tips on how to keep our pooches calm, confident, and content through all the spooky season chaos. So handing over to Anna.
Magic. Thank you, Rachel. So we've dived into that kind of itch and skin health with Leah. We're now jumping into another kind of aspect of Halloween and this time of year, which is the calm, the confident, and the content. And Halloween it's really exciting time of year for us, whether we are pet parents or we have kids or we're just planning things ourselves. And the same for our pets. But at times for our pets, particularly our dogs, it can actually feel a bit more like nights of fright or change or unsettlement, less than fun. So between doorbell rings, costumes, fireworks, new smells, it's no wonder that so many dogs and cats can find October really quite unsettling and unnerving. So during this kind of part of the session, we're just going to look at keeping things calm, confident, and content, even when that world outside is full of spooky surprises. A wee insight, dogs actually read human body language better and more than any other domestic species, even more than primates. So during Halloween, our gait, our posture, our clothing all change, and this can really confuse our dogs. But when does fear wearing a costume become an issue? And how do we manage that anxiety around costumes, visitors, and of course, the kind of noise that comes with it? Halloween brings one of the biggest mysteries to our dogs, which is why all of a sudden do their humans smell the same but look completely different? And costumes can really throw a dog's ability off when recognizing their person. They scent sight match, and studies have shown that dogs rely on a combination of smell and voice and facial recognition. And when one of those parts doesn't match, for a lot of our dogs, that can really trigger confusion. And for some dogs, even a fear-based reaction. An interesting fact is even a small costume accessory like a hat or a mask can actually block up to 60% of facial cues in dogs, and they normally rely heavily on this. So a top tip, if you are dressing up, particularly for our younger dogs or our rescue dogs, let your dog see and sniff the costume before you put it on. Talk to them in a normal voice and move slightly slower while wearing parts of the costume just to build up an awareness and confidence. Using treats, I love our training treats. They're just kind of small little bite-sized nuggets, but they're perfect just to help kind of build that association with the outfit and really create a good response and a good experience rather than confusion. And a wee extra tip is for our anxious dogs, you can dab an adaptil pheromone spray on visitors' hands or potentially around the kind of doorway. And this can really help dogs associate new people, visitors, with a kind of sense of calmness. And this isn't just for Halloween. And when it comes to visitors or trick-or-treaters, remember, repeated doorbell rings can sound like an alarm to a sensitive dog. Our dog's hearing range goes up to 45 hertz, which is more than twice ours. So this sudden burst of noise can be really intense, particularly if it's over and over. And all of this happens at a time when our dogs are settling down. This is their quiet time. This is their routine. And suddenly you have this overwhelm and excitement and buzz and then volume that really increases. So why not try playing a doorbell recording at a low volume? During calm times, this could be in the lead up to. You can reward your dog for staying relaxed. You can encourage friends and family to come and visit and do the same. And this is ultimately leading into desensitization. And on the night itself, when we know we're going to get those trick-or-treaters, create a safe zone. This is a quiet room with closed curtains, soft music, maybe a long-lasting chew, making sure we're obviously keeping an eye on them, or a licky mat. Again, we're creating not only a distraction, but a really safe space for them. And let's not forget cats, even though we're here about our dogs. Vertical spaces, shelves, cupboards can give that kind of vantage point without stress. And if your dog's anxiety peaks with visitors, it's actually absolutely fine for you to skip that doorbell entirely. Take my neighbour, for example. She works for the RSPCA. She has 4 rescue dogs that are very doorbell triggered, and her priority is them, as it should be. So instead, last year, she set up a really nice table right down at the bottom of the drive. It was all dressed in kind of Halloween. It was super fun. So we were still able to trick or treat. They were still able to join in, but none of this impacted her dogs. Ultimately, your dog's comfort comes first. But what about things we can do to make that enjoyable? So spectacular scent games and really beating that boredom indoors. We dived into this a little bit in our last session, where October changes, we've got darker evenings. We're ultimately spending less time outside, which is lovely. We're all tucking up, we're snuggling down, but it can increase stress levels. And this is particularly common for high energy or even anxious dogs. So we want to make sure we're boosting mental stimulation. And this isn't just fun enrichment. This actually reduces cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone, and boosts serotonin and dopamine, which is that feel-good chemical. We're helping to balance emotional stability. And a nose shocker. So dogs actually have 300 million scent receptors in their nose. We only have 6 million. And they also can inhale and exhale separately to track direction. And a real kind of crazy fact is our dogs can detect 1 teaspoon of sugar in 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Sniffing is essential. It's not optional, but it also has a wonderful benefit. So some really simple games that I know I love doing with my dogs, and I tweak and change them depending on the breed. So I have 2 very different Labradors. One is very laid back and slightly lazy, and one is very much the kind of typical breed. She wants to retrieve, she wants to find things, she wants to bring you everything, and a little crazy terrier that really is chaos. So I can tweak and change these games to meet the different components or characteristics of my dogs. Treat trails, scattering food in one room, encouraging my dogs to sniff them out. It mimics natural foraging. Which hand is a big game we love, which is simple, but it's great for engagement, eye contact, and bonding. And it's also very good if you have a multi-dog household, because it does encourage waiting and respect and balancing the other dogs. And scent cloths. So rubbing a t-shirt or using an old dirty-ish t-shirt from another person or a favorite person, hide it and reward when found. Again, lands so well for those really scent-driven dogs like our spaniels. And something like the shell game, so hiding a treat under a plastic cup. It's a kind of canine version, but again, they can sniff out that treat, and it lands really well with our scent-based dogs. And find the object. So again, you can get your dog excited. You can build into this, draw attention to a favorite toy or a reward. And training and interactive bursts should be short. You can build in sit, paw, recall. Again, this is all boosting stimulation. And remember to rotate enrichment items. So keep things high value and keeping that boredom low. And a wee kind of nugget is by using nose activities, it actually kind of activates the olfactory bulb in the brain, which connects directly to the limbic system. And this is the brain's emotional center. So sniffing literally encourages like a self-soothe, and soothes and relaxes that nervous system. But keep sessions short. 10 minutes is absolutely perfect to avoid mental fatigue or any pressure between you and your dog. Another takeaway is spotting signs early. So we often think of fear as being really obvious. They're shaking, they're hiding, they're barking. But a lot of dogs, it's really subtle stress signals. They might recognize them as being a little bit different, or maybe we miss those subtle cues. But picking up on them and understanding your dog can really prevent escalation. So looking out for a whale eye, which is showing the white of the eye, licking lips or yawning when they're not connected to being tired, pacing or turning away from a stimuli, sudden scratching, sneezing, or kind of stretching, these are all displacement behaviors. And suddenly you're noticing your dog is shedding quite out of the blue and a lot of hair, or they're walking through the kitchen and they're leaving these sweaty paw marks. Much like us, and cats do the same, they can pick up on mirroring our mood and how we behave. So when we're leaning into knowing that fireworks are coming, or knowing that we're having to adapt routines because it's going to be busy, we're going to have trick-or-treaters, if you are building up a concern or a bit of an anxiety around this, your dog will pick up on this. So again, keeping your routine as balanced and as steady as you can, keeping it as calm and as balanced as you can, will really help. And I often think if I know fireworks are coming, I prepare calmly, and I make sure I stick to my routine to an extent, which is grabbing a cup of tea in the evening, it's settling down for my favourite show, and the dogs feed off that. If you spot any of the kind of cues of anxiety or concerns, you can remove your dog from the situation, give them a calm environment to reset, and really avoid enforcing or pushing that interaction. Instead, we want a neutral, safe space to allow them to build up to this and approach this when they're ready. Noise sensitivity is obviously a massive one at this time of year, so fireworks and desensitization. And fireworks are ultimately a Halloween nightmare for many pets. Around 45% of dogs show signs of fear during fireworks season, and often, once these associations form, they tend to worsen every single year. And a wee fact is fireworks reach 150 decibels, which is louder than a jet engine, and dogs hear sounds 4 times further than we do. So even a firework in the distance can actually feel like it's really quite close. So tips for desensitizing start now. You want to be building up to this before the peak season. Play low volume fireworks paired with play, food, those enrichment games. Gradually increase the volume over a few days. Never jump to that kind of realistic level. And counter conditioning in action is key. So when a loud noise happens, we want it to be a positive response. This could be bringing in treats. It rewires the dog's brain to expect something good when they hear a bang. And a myth buster is dogs don't just get over it. If they are exposed repeatedly without a buffer, without balancing that emotional sync, this fear deepens, the memories really heighten, and they set in within the brain. So for dogs that are already fearful, or we're balancing an unknown history with a rescue, concerns are always best discussed with your vet as well. Short-term supports, medications, supplements can really help. Pexion, Zylkene, Camex, Adaptil collars are all really good options, and they set you up to just give your dog that little bit extra support. So in terms of setting yourself up for success, create a den. Blankets over a crate, white noise on the TV, a familiar smelly t-shirt, safe favourite shoes. You can close the curtains, set up that nice space. You've got your cup of tea, your buffer sounds on, but you're calm and relaxed. Avoid fireworks walks, walk before dark, and use a long line if they are a little bit prone to shooting off. And try pre-fireworks prep. So even if we're getting close now to fireworks, you still have time to prep for the future ones coming up at Christmas. Low volume sound exposure, scent games, short settled sessions, predictable routines. And ultimately, one call out is firework stress can trigger a tummy upset, so a gastrointestinal upset. And this is all to do with the gut-brain axis. Diarrhea or a little bile vomit can trigger post-fireworks, and this is all stress-related. Things like vet-approved supplements with L-theanine can really help support this GABA calming. and help calm the nervous system. And our calming supplementries are fantastic. They've got a lovely balance of these just if you need a little boost. But leaning into kind of wrapping things up in terms of calm, confident, and content, we want your pet to stay wickedly well and happy this Halloween. So prepare early, get used to costume sounds, visitors, protect their space. You have the power and the ownership to be able to protect your pet, to create that space, to say no to visitors, to set up something alternative. Soothing music, it always works wonders. Scent play to channel energy and relieve anxiety, and learn to recognize those signs of stress before they escalate, and plan ahead. So making sure you are prepped and prepared to avoid any last minute panics on the night. Calm behavior ultimately also releases oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. So your reassurance genuinely changes your dog's chemistry. So it does come and stem from you for a lot of dogs with a bit of extra support, but it can definitely start with you as pet parents. And a key fact is after a stressful event, regardless of what that event is, a dog's heart rate can take up to 2 hours to return to base level. So give them time, give them space, don't rush any normal routines. It's my dog, and allow everything to calm back to normal. But a calm pet isn't just a happy pet, they're healthier. Chronic stress affects digestion, immunity, emotional balance. So a truly happy pet, confident, relaxed, ultimately means for a healthy one as well. But a happy Halloween, and passing back to Rachel.
Thanks, Anna, for sharing all those helpful tips. Before we do bring on our final speaker, let's squeeze in another quick poll. So this time I want to know, which of these have you tried to help your dog calm during the spooky season? Have you tried calming music or white noise? Maybe you've made a snug, safe space or a den by putting blankets over a crate or something like that. You've maybe tried the Adaptil or calming supplements. Distraction with play or training, or none yet, but you're planning to try this year. If you could drop your thoughts into the comments, that would be great. So how do we help our dogs so far? So yeah, we've got calming music, calming supplements, blankets. Yeah, turning the TV on. Yeah, amazing. Any more? Distraction and training. Yeah. I found previously that playing, fireworks on the TV beforehand can get them used to the noise. Made a safe space and used calming treats. Yeah. I normally just cuddle him on the sofa and talk to him. Yeah, you can't beat a nice cuddle either, can you? You get two in one there, keeping them calm, you calm, and a nice cuddle at the same time. Brilliant. Thankfully, my two don't react to fireworks. Yeah, perfect. Brilliant. So, next we are going to be moving on to our final speaker, and that is Lucy. She's going to be wrapping things up with how to keep our pets safe and sound this spooky season. So, passing over to Lucy.
Hello, everyone. So, as Anna mentioned also, with Halloween in full swing, our dogs might be wondering why there are strange glowing pumpkins around the house and children dressed as skeletons showing up at the door every 5 minutes. And whilst Halloween can be lots of fun, but for our pups, it can also come with a few sneaky hazards. So, we're going to go through some of the main ones today to make sure we can keep our pups safe during Halloween. So first up, we've got toxic treats. So we know at Halloween, we all love a treat at Halloween and they're everywhere. You go in the shops and they're facing you as soon as you walk in. But they can be dangerous for our pups. So things like chocolate and, you've got sweets that can contain xylitol, which is the sweetener often found in sugar-free sweets. And these can make our pups become unwell. Even small amounts can cause problems for our pups. So we really want to be making sure that the treat stash is safely out of Paul's reach. And I don't know about you guys, but I found last year lots of people tend to put the bowls outside. There was one house that had a baby, so they said, please don't knock. Which is great for them, but sometimes we've got to be so careful looking out for these bowls that can just be on the floor to make sure our pups don't get them, because I know my pup would try her absolute hardest to get the bowl. So we have to be extra cautious around this time. So we know that accidents can happen and that dogs have a real talent for sniffing out things. like my puppy. She is 5 months old, so I'll let her off a little bit. But if you do ever find yourself in this situation where your pup may have eaten chocolate or, sweet that you may think may contain xylitol or anything else potentially toxic, we don't want to panic, but we do want to act quickly. And the best thing you can do is call your vet whilst already making your way down to your vet practice, taking any packaging with you, or if you can't do that, making a note of what your dog's eaten and how much roughly that your dog has eaten, as this information will really help your vet work out the type of toxin your dog's had, how serious it might be, and what kind of treatment that they will be expected to make as soon as you arrive. Now, something that might not be on the top of the mind is wrappers. So if your kids are anything like mine, they can open their Halloween sweets in about 0.3 seconds and the wrappers get left behind. And those shiny bits of foil or plastic, that while they might seem harmless, they can actually be a choking hazard for our pups and even cause blockages if they are swallowed. So it's definitely something else to keep an eye on. Next up, we've got costumes. So we all love seeing our pups dressed up for Halloween. Who can resist a tiny little pumpkin or a spooky skeleton dog? But while they might look adorable, wearing a costume can feel strange or even stressful for dogs if they're not used to it. If you're planning on dressing your pup up, try introducing the costume well before Halloween night. You can start with short sessions where your dog can sniff and investigate the costume, and that can lead on to popping it on for a few seconds at a time, offering plenty of praise and treats to build that positive association. And you can gradually increase how long they wear it for, and the goal is for your dog to feel confident and comfortable and not restricted or anxious. When the big night arrives, remember that there's already lots going on. You've got loud noises, excited kids, visitors at the door, flashing lights, unfamiliar smells, all of which can be overwhelming for our dogs, especially if they're wearing something new as well. We want to make sure their costume's not tight, restrictive, or covering their face. They should be able to move, breathe, and communicate freely with us. And we want to keep an eye out for any of those stress signals, such as yawning, lip licking, any change to the ear position, or if they're trying to shake or paw their costume off. And finally, we want to be double checking the costume for any small parts which may go unnoticed, such as buttons, or sometimes you get tiny decorations that they could be chewed off and swallowed by our pups. So we really want to just be checking everything before we put our pups in anything. And if your pups aren't up for a Halloween costume, that's absolutely fine. If I tried to get it on my dog, she would probably look at me as if to say, absolutely not. Why not try, a Halloween bandana or a Halloween themed collar? You can still bring the Halloween feels just without the stress. Next up, decorations. Decorations seem to be everywhere this year. And whilst they make your home feel spooky, but for our dogs, they can sometimes be more of a trick than a treat. And it's easy to forget how curious our pups can be, especially when there are lots of new smells, lights, textures all around the house. There's a couple of things that we just need to keep in mind. So first up, we've got candles and pumpkins. So pumpkins with real candles inside might look great in your window or your garden, but they're a hazard waiting to happen. A wagging tail or a curious nose could easily knock one over. So you could try swapping the candle out for a battery operated candle or LED lights instead. However, we still want to be making sure they are out of reach for our pups. Now, Halloween, in the most recent years, you start to see glow sticks and also battery powered decorations, and these are often irresistible for our dogs. They're shiny, they move, and they smell interesting. But if chewed or punctured, they can leak chemicals that can cause irritation. So it's important if you suspect your pup has bitten into a glow stick or a battery powered decoration, it's always best just to call your vet for advice. And then you've got your other decorations, such as your fake cobwebs, tinsel, string lights. I seem to have lots of real cobwebs, which is not out of choice, but they seem to be taking over my front garden at the moment. And fake cobwebs might look spooky on your front porch, but to a playful pup, they can look like a fun toy. And unfortunately, they do pose a risk of choking or a blockage if swallowed. And the same goes for tinsel or string lights, which can also cause entanglement if your dog decides to run through them mid-zoomy. We always want to keep these decorations out of reach and make sure any wires are safely tucked away. Now, before the festivities kick off, you can take a minute to do a dog's eye view of your home. You can crouch down and see what your pup might be tempted to sniff, chew, or bump into. A quick tidy up can really go a long way in keeping the Halloween fun and safe for everyone. My house at the moment, everything is above shoulder height where my pup can't jump up and get it, because guaranteed if it's any lower, she definitely will try. And where I live, lots of the houses have already put their Halloween decorations up. And at first, Nellie, my pup, she wanted to sniff everything and she was so curious because it's new and exciting. And, you know, when there is that change, that's all they want to do, find out what's going on. But after a few times of walks round the block, you know, that gentle exposure to the decorations, she became completely unfazed. And sometimes a bit of calm, repeated exposure can really help dogs get used to new sights and smells without fear. So I completely understand that my section's been a bit doom and gloom so far. So we're going to lighten things up with some good Halloween news. That pumpkins aren't just for carving. They're actually really great for our dogs too, as we found out earlier. So pumpkin is full of goodness. It's packed with fibre, vitamin A and vitamin C, all of which can help support digestion, immunity and a healthy skin. It's one of those simple, wholesome ingredients that can do a world of good in small amounts. That said, moderation is key. Too much pumpkin can have the opposite effect and cause a tummy upset. So we want to be thinking of it more as a healthy extra. There's a quick few do's and don'ts for pumpkins. We want to be sticking to plain cooked pumpkin. You can usually find it in most supermarkets down the tin dial. We just want to be making sure it contains no added salts or sugars. However, there's pumpkins everywhere at the moment, so you can grab a pumpkin, boil the pumpkin, and we just want to be making sure that we keep the skin and the seeds away from our pup, as they can be tough for them to digest. And if yourselves or your kids, they're carving pumpkins, just make sure the mushy bits in the middle and the candles stay well out of reach. So while we're keeping an eye out for spooky hazards this Halloween, it's nice to know that there's at least one treat that's both safe and healthy for our pups. So to sum it up, we want to keep treats human only, offer a bit of pumpkin goodness, make sure pups are comfy with any costume choices, and keep the decorations dog safe. And that is all from me, and I'll be passing back to Rachel.
Thank you. So big thanks to Leah, Anna and Lucy for taking us through the itches, the stresses and the spooky safety tips. Remember, calm pets, comfy coats and no sneaky, scary snacks either. Now it's time to head into our question and answer session. Do make sure to pop any questions into the question and answer box and we'll answer as many as we can. Just a quick reminder as well, don't pop any into the chat because we might miss them or lose them in there. So pop them into the question answer box where we can keep an eye on them too. Perfect. I noticed in the chat actually, just whilst you were speaking, Lucy, Christine was asking about the Adaptil, so I just thought I'll just address that first. So Adaptil, you can get it in a spray, you can get it in a collar, you can get it in a diffuser, you can pick it up in many pet stores, you can get it on Amazon, online, lots of online pet stores, that kind of thing. It's quite readily available, so yeah, have a little look online, I would say, or if you're in the pet store, have a little look down the calming aisle and you'll find it down there. Perfect. So I can see some questions coming through now actually. So I've got the first one is on flea treatment. So Deborah has asked, what is the best flea treatment, as I am using Advantage but it doesn't seem to work? Anna, could you help Deborah with this one, please?
If I could find the unmute button, yes. Absolutely. So it depends. I think you mentioned in the chat nothing's working. What I'd initially be conscious of is not rushing to put something else on. So depending on when last it was applied, there usually is a period of time recommended before you can apply something else. And the one you've tried is really good, but sometimes if it is an issue, it can be a little bit more about treating everything else as well. So I tend to, I think last time I used just a pretty straightforward kind of frontline flea treatment to actually treat my dog. But then just being conscious of the fact if there's 1 or 2 fleas on my dog, the chances are they've jumped. They're horrid little critters. So treating the house as well. And you can get something called Index or RIP fleas. Again, would recommend picking up probably from your vet or from an online kind of vet prescription type site, just because it's at a decent strength that will actually attack and get rid of. It's pet safe. You do have to clear the area. It's just a big spray can, treat it. And again, I think it's kind of Leah's mentioned, making sure you treat just washing blankets, beds at a decent temperature just to eradicate everything. But I would just double check when using the Advantage, you're then safe to apply something else, but treat around as well. And we're here to help if it helps to jump on and chat anything through at any point.
Thanks, Anna. Perfect. So moving on. Right, someone has asked, my dog licks us a lot every time he is near us. Is this something to get concerned about? He licks his paws too, but there is nothing there, no redness or smell. Lucy, could you help with this customer, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So dogs can lick us for several reasons, and in most cases, it's not necessarily a problem. However, there's lots of different contributing factors. So we know that dogs lick for attention, that bonding. However, they can also lick for attention seeking. Sometimes they do it for that attention, or it can just be a habit. There's lots of different reasons why. I would say that, what's normal, licking occasionally, where they're not it's not disrupting their day, where they're licking so much and they're constantly sort of seeking you out. However, when it becomes, it's a constant and they won't leave you alone, and it's, it may be something else that you need to maybe look at or investigate. And then when it comes to, licking paws, again, it can be normal grooming for them. You mentioned there's no redness, which is great. Sometimes it can be a habit. My dog used to lick his paws all the time, and it was a habit. It was more a self-soothe, more than anything else. And sometimes if there is a little bit of anxiety, that can also be a contributing factor. So it'd be really, good to know. Maybe you could pop us an email afterwards. Rachel will go through the information. Pop us an email, because there are lots of different questions that can be asked. And each will probably have a different answer of sort of why it may be, why the licking may be. I mean, when to get concerned, again, if it becomes obsessive, all day, disrupting rest. So, during sleep time, if we're disrupting rest, that's not necessarily the best thing. And if you notice any changes, so if there is any redness, any hair loss, which there doesn't seem to be at the moment, but I definitely think it's maybe one to pop us an email and we can have a little bit of a deeper dive into, why it may be happening.
Thank you, Lucy. Brilliant. So next one. I have quite a specific question. My pup used to be fine with visitors knocking on the door until our baby was born 3 months ago. Congratulations. Now he goes crazy, barking, zoomies, mental whenever anyone knocks at the door or comes near the house. Would you have any advice on how to help him navigate this period of change? Leah, could you give Lauren some tips and tricks here?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, congratulations, Lauren. And I know firsthand what you're experiencing, because I had the same thing when my baby was born quite a little time ago now. So it can be quite natural to have sort of a change in behavior when a routine changes, as we've discussed. And in this situation, it does sound like your little one is almost having a little bit of a protect mechanism, so that they may feel like it's their responsibility to almost protect the house for baby. It might also be good if you can put in the chat how he is just in generally. Is he quite an anxious little one? Any anyway? How does he do when you do leave the house? That might be quite handy to know. We do find a lot of dogs that just naturally do have a level of anxiety. Sometimes they have that fight or flight mode. So sometimes they may just, want to handle the situation head on, or they may sort of retreat. So in this situation, sometimes if they are a little bit nervous or anxious about the situation, especially if there has been a lot of routine change, it can be that they are putting that protective mechanism up. Certainly something that can help if you are seeing him be a little bit more anxious or a bit more territorial, sort of when people are coming to the house, certainly utilizing those things like the adaptol sort of sprays or the diffusers that you can pop in the home, as long as they're sort of tucked out of the way of sort of baby, as baby starts learning to crawl and things like that. Also sort of using sort of techniques to help him feel a little bit more comfortable and ease. If you know that you are going to be getting visitors, sort of almost preempting that in terms of popping some food on a licky mat. So a licky mat is sort of looking at sort of spreading some butternut on there and letting him have a good lick of that. We know the action of licking is a comfort stimulus for the brain. So ahead of those visitors coming, getting a licky mat out, getting him to have a good lick at that, or popping some butternut in a Kong ball, letting him have a good lick at that can also be quite nice, just to get those chemicals releasing in the brain to make him feel a little bit more at ease. Sometimes as well, it's about sort of meeting on neutral ground. It sounds a little bit silly, but if you feel that, if anyone's coming up to the house or knocking on the door that he is going a little bit crazy, then sort of, if you have got the safe space to tell visitors, shut the gate on the way in if you have got a front garden, and then open the door, let him go and have his minute and greet them in the front garden, where it isn't as territorial, it is a little bit more of an open space. There isn't sort of, that I need to protect my baby brother. So having that, and then when he comes in the house with that visitor, it's almost like it's a natural response that they're both coming in together. So that's something that you can do. Also looking at sometimes like calming supplements. So if you're going to have visitors that day, then using sort of the calm supplements can be quite nice, just to have that ease. Or using sort of chews as well. The action of chewing just can get that brain stimulated in emotion, so he doesn't sort of appear more overwhelmed or sort of not knowing what to do with that energy when it does happen, because he's exerted some of that energy beforehand. Really getting his brain thinking beforehand, sort of scatter feeding treats around the house, sending him on a little search and rescue mission certainly can help. He's normally social as anything, loves people, loves exploring, only changed since becoming a protective big brother. So it's just because he's trying to fulfill that role. And I think sometimes like meeting on that neutral ground in the front garden if you can, or if if you don't have that front garden, almost preempting it, popping him on his lead, his lead or his collar harness, and then walking him out into the front garden to greet the visitors can be just good. And then everyone coming in together, just so that everything's a little bit more calmer for him going forward. If you do continue to struggle, there is also a couple of links that you can use. So the Dogs Trust have a free behaviour support line. Obviously we're vet nurses and we're not fully behavioural, but we do have a level of training. So the Dogs Trust support line can be quite useful. If one of the nurses can just pop that in the chat, so then that we've got that to hand for Lauren, that would be good. There is also the APBC website. So A for Alpha, P for Papa, B for Bravo, C for Charlie. APBC is a list of accredited behaviourists that if you are getting a little bit more increasingly concerned that he's just a little bit excitable, then you can sort of speak to them and they might be able to give you some more tips as well. But I hope that helps.
Perfect, thanks Lee. I was just trying to get those links into the chat there. So the top one is the Dogs Trust Behaviour Support Line, and as Leah said, that one is free. And then we've got the APBC website there as well, if anybody does need to speak to any behaviourists. Brilliant. So I think that is pretty much all we've got time for today. We really hope that you found this session useful and that you've picked up some new tips and tricks along the way, especially to help out with the stressful time of Halloween and bonfire as well. if we didn't manage to get to your question, please don't worry. You can drop us an email at vetnurses@butternutbox.com and we'll be sure to get back to you with an answer. You can also join our Facebook community. So we have a Facebook page called For the Love of Dogs, where we share advice, support, and plenty of dog chat as well. And don't forget, you can book a free appointment with one of us here as well, anytime through the Butternut app. Just pop onto your account. You can do it on your online account as well, where you can just get general advice. You know, we're happy to help, whether it's weight, portions, fussy eating, digestion, skin, allergies, anything at all. Do feel free to pop in an appointment there, and we'll be more than happy to support. But from myself, Anna, Leah, and Lucy, we'd like to say a huge thank you for joining us today. We hope you and your pups all have a wonderful afternoon. But yeah, have a really good, happy Halloween, everybody. Take care.